Just before I jump in here, I just want to say how touched I've been at all the love that this community has shown me, obviously throughout the years, but just the outpouring since I made the announcement that I'll be stepping down from my duties here. This is a beautiful community, and the words that people have shared have just been so touching. And I trying to respond and get back to all of you. And I just want you to know it's meant the world to me. Thank you. About this series, we begin one today. Throughout history, humans they've done many things in the name of spirituality. Humans have built cathedrals. They've climbed mountains. They have prayed. They have endured sweat lodges. People have practiced gratitude. Like this morning, we've sung together. People have marched, sometimes in protest, sometimes in celebration. People have shared meals, all for a reason. We've done these things for a reason. It's because deep down inside, something inside us is longing for something more, and we've seen and we've felt, we've experienced something happen when we've engaged in certain rituals and practices. Something stirs up. We're wanting to discover the spirituality of something that stirs us deeply. Something that awakens wonder, that moves our spirit, that gives us purpose and meaning. I don't know what your spirituality practices have all entailed. Sunday morning has played a big part in my world, in my life over the years. You can't even know how many Sunday services I've been a part of over my lifetime. And weekday services and Friday nights. And this has played a part of my spirituality. But I talk to people all the time who have explored all kinds of different practices that sit outside my wheelhouse. Times where I'm going, that's a spiritual practice for you. Wow. Showed a picture of someone walking the El Camino Trail. I've talked to numerous people, even within our community, that have done the El Camino. Walking for miles, at the end of a day, sitting down and eating with others, people from all over the world, and being on this kind of spiritual pilgrimage. Over the next 4 weeks, beginning today, we're going to talk about 4 different practices that might sit outside your wheelhouse, outside of your kind of realm of practice. And probably not because necessarily it wouldn't work for you. It wouldn't stir up deep things and help you experience something more. It's just, it's been outside your tradition. You haven't been introduced to it. Some of them might seem weird. It's like, ooh, what the heck? But we believe they work for different ones, and sometimes it's worth exploring practices that are not familiar. Because every now and then, without us even realizing it, we end up finding ourselves going through the motions, not realizing that a lot of what once lit us up, that allowed us to open our senses to something deeper and wider, are no longer working. And sometimes we need to step out of the norm to experience something a little different. And when we do, it can be surprising what can happen. So that's over the next 4 weeks. Today we're going to talk about pleasure. The role that pleasure can play in our spirituality. This past week, Thursday night, Kathy and I were actually just getting ready to make dinner. And we get a call from some friends and say, look it, we got tickets to the Flames game. We can't go. Can you guys go? And I'm like, what time is it? I'm looking at it. I'm like, oh man, it's 5:45. And I looked at Kathy. I've had a blistering week and a half. so much going on. We had a wedding. I was performing on the weekend and rehearsal. And I'm just kind of looking at Kathy going, I don't think so. But Kathy said, let's go. Let's do it. I'm like, okay. So we scrambled, got out of there. We get down to the Saddle Dome, and we're walking through the concourse, and the crowd is everywhere. And all of a sudden, we bump into someone we haven't seen in a while, and we're like, what? Hey! And there, people are kind of running around us. We're stopped. We're hugging. It's good to see you. We're catching up. It's like, this is amazing. And we're like, oh, we got to get going. Hey, the game's going to start. So we head down. We go down to our seats, and there's some long-term friends sitting right in the seats in front of us. We got these fantastic seats. Row 4, right there. Dustin Wolf, right. I could feel like I can grab him. I'm just like, woo! And we see these people, and they're turned around. We're just connecting every time there's a whistle. It's like, hey, and we're chatting about the kids and talk. And all of a sudden, the Flames decide to play. It was surprising. It's like, whoa, they scored. And the crowd is erupting, and we're high-fiving. And we walked out of the Saddle Dome that night. And I'm looking at Kathy just going, was that a blast or what? I'm thinking, I was this close to calling her a night, man. I was thinking I'm in bed at 7:30 almost, I'm just like, whew. Was that ever amazing? Last week I took a week off. There's some vacation time. I'm trying to unload, and I had a whole bunch of stuff to do. And an old friend, Carmen Cocott, maybe some of you remember Carmen, worked here at Friends Church for 22 years. Carmen and I have known each other since high school. Carmen said, Jeff, let's get together. I'm in town. I'm like, oh, man, I got such a crazy week. He's like, we're getting together. So we met up for a happy hour down at a pub. And I remember even as I'm driving down there, I'm going, what am I doing, Jeff? I got so much to do. I get in there and we begin, right from the minute I hugged him, we sat down in 2.5 hours of reminiscing and belly laughs and talking about some tough life stuff. And I walked out of that pub going, whew, is that amazing? Man, I almost called that off. These are some of my recent pleasurable moments that just happened. Hey, I know pleasure looks different for every person. What does it look like for you? If I were to ask you to just stand up, and I'm not gonna, but if I was to ask you to stand up, relax. Actually, no, I won't. But if I were to ask you to say, hey, tell me about a moment recently that you had that lit up your pleasure centers. What story would you tell? Do you have some? Do you have a moment just in the last couple weeks where you go, oh man, let me tell you? Is there a thought that comes to your mind? How far back do you have to go before you go, oh, actually? How many measurable moments of real pleasure have you experienced lately? Would you say you have them often? Are they a consistent thing, or are they mostly accidental? You stumble on them? If I was to be really honest, those 2 pleasure moments wouldn't have happened if it were up to me. I would have missed them. Sometimes I'm a little too practical. Sometimes if I look back through certain seasons, I have to look back a ways. Let me ask you something. How high of a priority does pleasure actually get in your life? Like of all the different things that you're trying to achieve in a week, where does pleasure sit? This morning I'm here to tell you that if you aren't prioritizing pleasure in your life, you could be hurting yourself. Dare I say, you could be hurting your spiritual journey. You heard me right. If you're not prioritizing pleasure, you could be hurting your spiritual journey. I'm going to talk about this. I'm going to challenge you to think deeply about the way that pleasure plays a role in your life. And in the end, when I'm done here shortly, in the next 2 hours, I'm going to challenge you to think deeply about the things that you do, the things that light up your pleasure centers. To get rolling here, though, I want to talk about the science of pleasure. Did you know that experiencing pleasure literally works miracles in your body? Science tells us this. Now, you've heard us talk about, and I know dopamine is a very common, hormone that gets bantered around today's society, but dopamine actually is a pretty cool little neurotransmitter. When you do something pleasurable, it's a chemical that gets fired up in our systems. And it says, whoa, me likey. That's what it does, basically. And says, hey, more of that. Kind of gets the ball rolling, going, oh, wow, did that feel good? It enhances the experience. It kind of injects this hormone into our reward pathways. It says, come on, let's go, let's do more of that. It's good. You taste some really excellent food, beautiful music, sex, nature, achievements. These are all things that stir up the dopamine, fire up. Causes all kinds of motivation and excitement. Yeah, this isn't a bad thing. This is a healthy thing. But there's also the endorphins. Someone told me the other day who loves going to the gym. He said, I especially love it when I'm leaving the gym. He says, going in, not so much. But he says, when I am literally walking out the door and my body has just been put through the mill, he said, the rush, this feeling of satisfaction, he says, it's hard to describe. I just feel so good. I feel so proud. I feel excited. That's the endorphins running through you. The natural painkillers and euphoria makers, they call them. These endorphins, they get released during exercise, laughter, sex, anything really exciting. Whoosh. They call it the helper's high. If you've ever been volunteering, watch it down in Mexico. We will have beat our butts building these homes, exerting so much energy. We will be hurting so bad. But this helper's high takes over as we think about what this home is going to do for that family. The rush. Yes. Runner's high. Runners can be running. I've never experienced it. I've only heard about it. But you can be running, and all of a sudden, it's just like you don't even feel like you're running anymore. These endorphins start taking over. There's also oxytocin that gets released. This is the bonding and pleasure hormone. Promotes empathy. It promotes trust and closeness. Enhances the pleasure of shared experiences and relational joy. The other night, the Flames, actually Kadri, on the night we're celebrating his 1,000th game, they present him the silver stick. He goes and lights the lamp. That crowd went berserk. I think I high-fived about 14 people all around me. People coming out of their skin, celebrating. You want to talk about oxytocin. I mean, I looked at this guy I'd never seen before. I'm ready to give him a hug. I felt this closeness to everyone around me. Yeah, that's oxytocin. Promotes relaxation. Actually, no, it promotes, all kinds of things. There's serotonin. Let me talk to you about that. You crest a vista on a mountaintop. You catch an amazing view. Maybe you walk down the fairway of a beautiful golf course. I didn't think I was going to do a whole message without sharing an analogy on golf. Of course not. You get into your happy place, and all of a sudden you almost get raptured in the moment. You just feel like, man, all is right in my world. That's serotonin moving in. Oh man, it has a way of just making the experience so vivid, so real. This is the mood stabilizer. It kind of works with, It works with dopamine. Dopamine sets you up on the high. Serotonin kind of levels you out and just kind of brings us peace. Yeah. And last of all, these endocannabinoids. Have you heard of these? This is nature's own cannabis that our bodies actually create within us. Didn't know this. You're weed machines, you guys. It promotes relaxation, stress reduction. It can help kind of this sense of flow, stability of one's internal systems. You get into something, it's our endocannabinoids that actually can let you just get lost in a moment. You ever found yourself doing something, you're finding so much pleasure in it, you just kind of lose a sense of time. You're just like, oh man, what am I doing? I got to get going. It's your body producing why? This pleasure, doing things that are pleasurable, create all this stuff. Let me ask you something. When's the last time you got lost in a moment? Pleasure. I wanted to share all of this science to show you that pleasure is not just some fleeting, selfish emotion. It's a coordinated symphony of chemicals that reward our behavior, that strengthen relationships. They reduce stress, bringing us right into the moment that we sit in, right there. They even help us heal. That's what pleasure does. Over the last number of years, as a church community, we've talked a lot about pleasure because it's true what Alessandra said. People get a little squirmy when you talk about pleasure in church. It's like, where were you taking that? Does that even belong in a spiritual conversation? We've worked hard to say that actually the Bible is not anti-pleasure. We've taken a whole series, in fact, to show you that actually if you walk through our heritage, our spiritual ancestors talked openly, celebrating pleasure. It's often kind of human history, especially human philosophy, that has kind of railroaded pleasure, making it out to be something kind of working against one's true spirituality. And it's like, we talked about the creation story itself, the book of Genesis, testimony of this, right from the very beginning, full of delight, rich colors. After each day of creation, our ancestors wrote, this character God in the story, he steps out creating the stars, and it's like going, wow, is that not amazing? The next day he creates the oceans, all the water. He's going, whoa! He gets to the end of it. 7 days, and it just says he's like amazed. Looks out over and says, now that was impressive. That was good stuff I just did here. Took pleasure in it. The Creator didn't make a gray functional world. He made one bursting with sensory joy. Or she, or it. Even the Garden of Eden. Did you know Eden, that word in Hebrew, it actually means delight? The Garden of Delight. The whole story started. Which is really kind of odd growing up in church. I mean, I was always taught that pleasure is dangerous. You don't want to be kind of having too much of that, because it can lead to all kinds of bad things. We were laughing the other night, Kathy and I, 34 years ago, we're on a plane headed for Hawaii. It was our honeymoon. And she leans over to me and she says, Jeff, stewardess was coming down the aisle serving out drinks and stuff. She says, Jeff, I'm going to order a blue Hawaiian. It was a sweet cocktail at the time that was big. This was back in the days when you could actually order up cocktails from while you're in economy. I mean, it was a mind-blowing day. It didn't matter, though. I'm looking at her going, Kath, don't do it. She's like, what? We're on our honeymoon. I'm not going to get loaded. I'm like, yeah, that wouldn't. I don't know. There was just something we'd been taught about alcohol. We didn't drink. It's like, I don't know what it'll do, but it'll hurt you. It'll be bad. People will see. I said, and Kath, I'm kind of the man of the house now. Okay? I'm the leader. All right? I think you want to pay attention to what I say. You know, she got all sober. She said, I'll take a double blue Hawaiian. That was the start of trouble. I look back at that and I think, wow, even having a tasty drink on a flight gave me a sense of nervousness. Something fun, something exciting, so conflicting, going, no, it can't be good. How many grew up in religious circles where just like you were given rules and you're just like going, I'm not sure what the rules for, but okay. And then there was like this guilt if you ever kind of, remember I was the treasurer of a high school, of our high school student union, and I was never allowed to go to dances, but as a treasurer, I got to be there to pay the band. But I remember being there and kind of going, wow, this is like so cool. And I'm like, oh, I'm not supposed to be here. Oh, and it was like conflicted. It's crazy. I know not everyone has religious baggage like that. In fact, I'm sure there's some people here this morning that are going, I have no problem prioritizing pleasure in my life. Well, good for you. Like, hey, no, truly, that is amazing. In fact, this morning I'm not talking to you in all honesty, but maybe some of the stuff that I'm going to say might help make sense of some people in your life who have a conflicted relationship with pleasure, because there's a lot of people. Sometimes it's not religious pleasure. Sometimes it's more of a conditioned cultural thing with pleasure. You know, I was thinking about a woman I was chatting with a little while back. She grew up in a military family. Her father believed in duty. Clean floors, straight backs, quiet meals. Kids were to be seen and not heard. Smiles were almost a sign of weakness, especially emotion. Oh, for sure. Laughter, maybe a necessary evil every now and then. Their house was neat, orderly, but it was joyless. Like a photograph drained of its color. Even birthdays, they would often slip by, sometimes even without candles and cake. Things that brought pleasure were often seen as wasteful, dangerous, because it could lead to laziness. It could lead to waste. You wouldn't take time off to do something you enjoyed. Are you kidding? Vacation time was rare. It was about hard work and productivity and getting ahead and success. How many were ever raised in a family, or maybe you witnessed this in and around you in your lifetime? There are many people that have watched this, and even to this day, like later on, I've watched people who are going, I just feel, even though they have lots, more than enough, there's guilt that slides in. when they go to actually think about doing something that brings them pleasure. But there's probably one other reason that I mentioned that conflicts us, that keeps us from really exploring pleasure. And that is this fear of overindulgence, even addiction, where it could lead. We were at a party once and there was so much food. I mean, they just went to town. Couldn't believe it. And we were all sitting around, and there's one girl at the party. She hardly had anything on her plate, and I was kind of razzing her. I'm like, come on. You can do better than that. Don't make me feel like a pig. You go back and you load up. And she was like, no, I'm good. And I was I was having fun kind of teasing her. I didn't know her really well, but maybe it was just my anxiety of being new in this, group of people, and some of these people, and so I'm teasing her and saying, oh yeah, you're going to start eating on your arm if you don't start getting over there, whatever. And she leaned over to me at one point. She said, you don't know this about me, but I used to weigh. She told me a weight. And I looked at her and went, what? She says, I have a very conflicted relationship with food, and I'm trying to sort this out. So she says, I'm very careful. I could tell, and she's saying it quietly. She's like, I'm so sorry. But for her, she says, I have to watch very carefully, because she says, I know what could happen. She says, my whole family have had a difficult time. And she says, I'm in a good place right now, but I know it could slide away. For some who have watched or experienced firsthand the destructive forces of addiction, there is a level of caution. When you say pleasure, it can take them automatically to a dark chapter where they're going, I know where that leads. You want to talk about partying, you want to talk about drinking, you want to talk about drugs. Shoot, man, it can be anything. Food, it can be shopping, it can be travel, sex, video games, exercise, even religion. There are people who have found that there's certain things that gets their hooks into them and they can't stop. And especially for some who maybe have some unresolved pain in their life, and that pleasure goes south hard. These experiences, which can be so life-giving, so exciting, so pleasurable for some, can be more about numbing and running from some kind of pain, leading them down some dark path. This indulgent pleasure can become a form of slavery. So I just want to be clear, as I'm talking about pleasure this morning, I'm not talking about a pleasure that leads to slavery. I'm talking about a pleasure that leads to something deeper and wider, excitement that lights up the pleasure centers, that draws you into something beautiful. Healthy pleasure doesn't have to be about escape. It can actually bring you more and more into the present moment. It doesn't have to isolate you from others. It can actually draw you closer to the people that are in your life and around you. When it's healthy pleasure, you can eat with mindfulness rather than binging mindlessly. You can consume, rather than consuming someone sexually, objectifying someone and using them as some kind of object of sexual pleasure. You can actually be drawn into intimacy with another person, experience something so magical. Listening to music can become a transcendent thing rather than drowning out some kind of painful thought or experience. This morning, as I'm talking about this, I want to challenge you to mindfully pursue pleasure in a healthy way. To think deeply about the things that exist right now in your life, the kinds of things that just have those kinds of create those powerful moments where you can feel all those hormones flowing through you. What are they? And can you prioritize them? And it doesn't have to be expensive. I know some people are saying, well, I'm not in a position to be able to go out and do some of those. You know what? It can be the smallest thing that can light up your pleasure centers this week. Just noticing some of the little sensory experiences that go on. You walk outside and it's warmer than you expected. Have you had one of those? Maybe not really recently, but you walk outside, you go, oh wow, I wasn't expecting this warm air. Oh, that felt nice. Just letting that linger and thinking about it. Stopping there, not just racing past it, but enjoying it. It could be the warm sun on your skin. Just going, oh, that feels good. A song that you hear. You go, oh, I love that song. And just stopping for a second and enjoying it. Or hitting it repeat. Just going, I want to listen to that again. Noticing the snow falling outside. Maybe it's something in nature that you just catch and you go, oh, is that beautiful? Letting it soak in. Saying to yourself, wow, that's just beautiful. How often do you just stop and just go, oh, wow, look at this. Shh, shh, shh. Listen. Oh, this feels so nice. Mindful savoring. That's one way of experiencing pleasure in your everyday. Another thing, embodied gratitude. Noticing what feels good in your body. You wake up from a deep sleep. Have you ever had that? You just go, oof, where am I? Oh, that moment. You just go, oh, that was good. That first hit of coffee in the morning. Oh, rather than just like go glug glug, it's like, no, just let it hit your tongue and enjoy that. And you sit down and enjoy a meal that is just so tasty. Just savoring it for a second rather than scarfing. Last night, Kathy and I and our siblings were at a big family wedding out at just outside of town. Oh man, it was such a good time. That's why my throat is hoarse. So I'm a little bleary-eyed trying to focus on my notes here. The moments we had around that table last night were amazing. I laughed so hard. Drank probably too much. We danced. I said, Kathy, I gotta speak in the morning. What am I doing? We gotta go. We had this amazing time, but I remember sitting around this table looking at my sisters and their husbands. Just going, oh, this is so good. It can happen just in these moments. You just let the pleasure soak up. Maybe it's a creative delight. Some of you, just by creating something, maybe it's some form of art, music, maybe renovation. Maybe you're handy, you want to do something. Light up the pleasure by just creating something. You've got to give yourself permission to do that. Maybe it's some form of shared joy. Maybe this week your joy will come from lighting someone else up. I don't know if you've seen him on Instagram. He wears this purple kind of velvet kind of dinner jacket. And he walks the streets. It's got an English accent. And he just loves just complimenting people in the street. It's random people. Oh, I love your hair. And he has such a great way that he does it. It's just, he's a magician with his words. And you watch the people go, boom. He just puts huge smiles on their face. And you can tell he gains so much pleasure from bringing pleasure to others. Maybe that will be your pleasure this week. Thinking deeply about who it is that you're going to light up. Maybe your pleasure will come from just stopping and resting. giving yourself permission to say, not today, not tonight. I am doing nothing. Maybe it's this afternoon. I'm going to lay on the couch and I'm going to sleep. I don't know how you're going to pursue pleasure this week, but I hope you will think deeply about what it is that truly works for you. And that rather than just saying, well, when everything else is wrapped up, after everything else is done, yeah, maybe I'll. No. You will, I hope, you'll say, today, I'm doing this. And it's going to feel good. And it's healthy. And I deserve it. You can do this in a healthy way, folks. Will you do it? Prioritize some pleasure. That's your assignment for today. It doesn't get better than that, I'm afraid. You guys should be giving me a standing ovation for giving you permission. No, I'm joking. But you really, really should be excited that this week your spiritual assignment is to go out and have some fun. Do something that lights you up. I pray you will do that in spades. Have a great week. Before I go, next week, I'm going to talk about something that is controversial. Every now and then, we push things outside the box, and we talk about stuff that is being talked about all around us. But for whatever reason, the church is very resistant to it. Doesn't want to have anything to do with certain conversations. You want to know what I want to talk about? I'm going to interview someone about the spirituality of psychedelics. I'm not going to encourage anyone to break the law. I'm going to tell you, though, there are people all over the world and throughout history, human history, that have experienced spirituality through the use of psychedelics. And I just think it's worth exploring. So next week, I'm going to interview someone who has been in that world, knows a lot about it. And I would just encourage you to come in with an open mind. I like to think most of you are open-minded. So we're going to do that. We're going to explore this. And what will happen is after you listen to this, you're going to notice you don't have to listen hardly very far. Podcasts, television, news stories, you're going to see it everywhere. And you'll be a little more educated about it. All right? So that's next week. It's going to be wild. You won't want to miss that. Thank you all for joining us this morning. We'll see you next week.